Okay, so I think the theme of today has definitely been support. So we've talked about how to support teachers, both new teachers and teachers who are already entrenched, who maybe need to be incentivized. We've talked about supporting the community, and right now we're going to talk about supporting students in the classroom. Support is one of the best things you can offer, but as teachers, we can only be stretched so far, and sometimes you need a little bit of help. And so to speak on behalf of, let me just make sure I get this right, writing interventionist and a writing intervention program, we have Stephanie English, Maria Dominguez, and Sue Rowse.
Good morning. So this morning, Maria, Steph, and I would like to present to you on writing intervention. We'd like to ask the question, would students benefit from a writing intervention program in Nashua? We have a short clip on the power of academic writing. Go ahead.
In the simplest form, writing is just words on a piece of paper. But in a deeper sense, writing can become an outlet for the mind. Writing is a way to express what you're thinking. It can be kept personal or shared with others. When the decision to share a thought becomes an action, this is when academic writing becomes tremendously important. Academic writing works specifically to inform, persuade, declare, instruct, or even entertain. Academic writing literally exists everywhere. The basic components of academic writing prevail in newspapers, magazines, textbooks, newsletters, emails, reviews, and the list goes on and on. We, especially as students, are completely engulfed in academic writing. Academic writing is so prevalent to everyday life that it's like we are drowning in it without even noticing. But, luckily for us, as potential young scholars, there is still time for us to learn to swim in the vast ocean of what we call academic writing. The elements that come with academic writing have the ability to make us powerful individuals. Through writing, we have the capability of influencing other lives. Consider a few well-known role models: Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, John F. Kennedy, J.K. Rowling, even Lil Wayne. Maybe. All of their work, whether it be speeches, books, or songs, include elements such as creativity, knowledge, organization, fluidity, and clarity. By using these elements, these individuals became not only leaders, but influencers of thousands of people. Ironically, or maybe not so ironically, these are the same elements used in academic writing. I don't know about you, but I think the ability to inspire others is something special. Think of all the things you can conquer by transforming academic writing into art, music, books, and even more extraordinary, a movement of change. Overall, academic writing is more than a homework assignment, more than a mundane scholarly essay. It is a spark of individual growth. It is an aid to help an idea expand into something more than a thought in the back of your mind. Academic writing serves as the catalyst into the start of influencing life, other than your own.
One of the things that struck me when I first saw this was that it talked about academic writing is more than homework. It's that spark of imagination and individuality. If you think about the mission statement that was shown earlier and trying to promote lifelong learning, we want our students to be the best that they can be, to have the best life that they can have. And I truly believe that through academic writing, they will not only increase their level of academic achievement, but they will grow as human beings. One of the quotes that I like is, "You learn to write better by reading, and we learn to read better by writing. Reading and writing work together to improve our ability to think." And what a concept is that, that we think deeper, we organize our thoughts, we can come to revelations by writing. So, all right, next. We're going to look at a few of the statistics. So we used the National Center for Educational Statistics as one of our resources because that's what the schools use, so it made sense to us. And I'm sure you're all familiar with NAEP. National Assessment of Educational Process. It's one of the largest nationally tests used. It's in the nation's report card. Go ahead. NAEP tests 3 things for writing: the ability of students to persuade while they write, the ability for them to explain, and the ability of them to convey experience. And this really goes with our middle school writing units and how we test our students. These are some of the national statistics, and if you look at this graph, honestly, it's a pretty dismal picture of students' ability to write. Roughly 20% of our students are below basic skills in writing nationally, and up to 60% of our students are at the basic level. To me, as an educator, as a science teacher, as a reading and writing teacher, that's unacceptable. Our students should not be at the basic level. They should be proficient. They should be excellent writers. Next. Okay, here's another study, and I believe 2011 was the first time that the tests were done on a computer. And it says 24% of our students in both grade 8 and 12 performed at the proficient level. And I don't know about you, but 24% at a proficient level is not acceptable. If I gave a test in my science class and only 24% of my students passed, I would wonder if there was something wrong with the test or if there was something wrong with my instruction. That would not be an acceptable average for a class to have, and yet as a nation we have 24% of our students proficient in writing. We obviously have a need to improve our instruction, our resources, and our students' ability to write, because it improves their lives in so many ways. Go ahead. So in Nashua, we give the Cornerstone Writing Prompt, and I'm sure at if you teach at the middle school level, you're all aware of this regardless of your content area. And at the high school, I believe the English teachers give it. But looking at our data, we use a 4-point rubric for scoring. 4 is exceeds expectations. 3 is meet the standards. 2 is approaching the standards. And 1 is below the standards. And you can see that I didn't even put a 4 on the graph because nobody reached it from 2015 to 2017 at Fairgrounds. We are in the approaching the standards range. Just think about that. Our average is approaching the standards, not meeting the standards, approaching. Again, as an educator, as someone who cares about the students in our community, that's just unacceptable. Next. One of the resources that I have, actually I didn't introduce myself and what I do. I'm a 6th grade science and reading and writing teacher at Fairgrounds Middle School. This is my 11th year in the district, and for 8 of those years, I've been a 6th grade teacher of science and reading and writing. For 2 years, I taught reading and writing exclusively, and 1 year here, I taught 7th and 8th grade science. So I've been in all grades in our building and in a variety of content areas. One of the resources that we have that's a fabulous resource for reading and writing classes is Kelly Gallagher. He's a nationally known teacher. He's a nationally known speaker. I've had the opportunity to speak to him, and he's also an author. If you want to go to the next slide. Those are some of his books, and I will tell you that out of the 6 books there, I have 5 of them, and I use them regularly as resources. He approaches writing in a way that's real to the students, and as an educator for me, he makes it The steps are very clear in writing instruction, and teaching writing is difficult. It's more challenging for me than teaching science or reading. It's hard, as we can tell by our statistics, because our kids aren't achieving writing. Go ahead. One of the statistics that Kelly Gallagher had in one of his books is the percentage of assignments that included writing in all content area classes. And if you look at the bottom one, this is the one that's really meaningful for me. Only 9% of assignments in middle school require students to write longer than a single paragraph. Well, it's no wonder our students aren't excellent writers, because they don't write regularly. If the students had to write more regularly, if they were held accountable to a basic minimum of standards across all content areas, we would have better writers. Just doing it more regularly would help them. And that's from, the source for that is the Education Trust, and that's from one of Kelly Gallagher's books. If you're interested in writing, if you are a writing teacher, I highly recommend them because they're great. Go ahead.
What do you do to the saying?
I wrote a saying, but in different words.
Excellent.
Change your words, change your world. That's what we're asking you to help us do for our students. We're asking you to help us increase their writing level and achievement by changing their words, by making them stronger, by requiring our students to write more regularly, by giving them the support that they need. And we're going to move on to Stephanie.
All
Thank
right.
you.
My name is Stephanie English. I am an 8th grade science teacher at Fairgrounds Middle School. The great thing about working with these two is that we all come from the same school, so we're all seeing the same trends. So it made our research and what we're looking at to increase writing much more powerful for us. So we're going to just take a look at some of the raw data we have. So the 4-point rubric that the district uses to score writing in middle schools is the one that Sue was talking about and how they score Cornerstone. We used this rubric in order to score writing assignments that we gave to our students. The 4 being exceeds the standard, 3 meeting, 2 approaching, and 1 below. You will see that when we get into the data that it's pretty consistent. Okay. It's pretty consistent with what we're seeing at the national level as well. So we did 3 different writing prompts, and we modeled the way that the NAEP testing works for writing. They really target specific areas of writing and different writing skills. The first writing prompt, we asked the question, if there were any problem in the world that you could solve, what would the problem be and why? Very general, very vague, and the students were able to really write a narrative and kind of guide it towards what they feel is and what they're passionate about. So if you take a look at the data, we have 3 different levels at the middle schools. We have honors, extensions, and foundations. Honors being our students who really are at higher proficiency levels just across the board. And just looking at the graph at the top, you'll notice that that's not necessarily the case when it comes to writing. If you look at the 4, which exceeds the standard, there's very few students that are really at that point. Most of our honors students for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade are really at that 3 mark. Some are still at the approaching, okay? But if you look down to the next graph over here, we have the extensions. The extensions is really our kind of mid-level students where they struggle with some areas, so they're not necessarily yet at the honors level. And that graph really shows that they're where they're supposed to be, first of all, in classes, but in writing, they're not there yet. Okay, we still have about half of them at the approaching and then half at the meets. We did notice that with the first writing prompt, because it was a narrative and it's something that most students are really comfortable with writing, that these scores were higher for writing prompt 1. For foundations, you'll see a lot of students are below. Some are approaching. There are very few that are really meeting that standard, but for the most part, this flow in the graphs in the data for writing prompt 1, you'll see very similar data in the next 2 slides as well. All right, so our second writing prompt was, we gave the students an article and they had to read the article and answer text-dependent questions. A lot of students, and this is proven in the NAEP data as well, a lot of students really struggle with understanding informational text and then being able to answer text-dependent questions about the information they've just read. In the writing piece, the reading piece, the comprehension is obviously lacking, and the writing piece is right there with it. You'll notice that for writing prompt number 2 in honors, we only have information for 6th and 8th grade. We weren't able to get information for 7th grade for extension and honors for this writing prompt. But you will still notice that most of our kids are meeting the standard, very few exceeding, and there still are some that are kind of hanging on to that approaching and don't have enough support to get to the next level. For writing prompt number 2 extensions, again, they're just about in the middle. These graphs pretty much speak for themselves. You can see that half are approaching, half are meeting, a very few are exceeding, and then going and looking at the foundations, they're all below the standard. They're not meeting the standard. A lot are far below, some are almost there, but for the most part, you'll see the trend in the honors, extension, and foundations. I think the most eye-opening part is really that honors graph where you don't see a lot of students that are exceeding and you still have students that are approaching at the honors level. All right, writing prompt number 3, this was really the persuasive piece. The informational writing as well as persuasive writing, those are the 2 areas of struggle that we see with our students nationally and on the local level. So writing prompt 3, we asked them to talk about something that they're very passionate about, which is allowing cell phones in schools. So opening up that question to students, it was really, first of all, it was really interesting to see their responses. I'm sure you guys can guess what their responses were. But it was also really interesting to see that this is something that they're truly passionate about and they're still struggling to write about it. And that was, I think, the most eye-opening part for me when I was grading these. They were so excited to answer the question because they're like, yep, I know what I'm gonna write. But once they got it down on paper, the level of writing was just not there. The honors, for this piece, you'll notice that there are a lot more approaching the standard for the persuasive writing than there were for the other 2. A lot of them are meeting, and then there were a few that were exceeding. The writing prompt for the extensions, it really looks somewhat similar to the honors. There are more approaching, there are a few meeting, and there's no one exceeding. And then the writing prompt for foundations, most were approaching, some are below, and some are meeting. It's just crazy to see that even if you give them something that they're passionate about to write about, they just don't have the skill or the support to put it down on paper in good paragraph structure, good grammar. They don't know how to really voice what they're trying to say and put it into words. And I think that's basically the big takeaway that we got from our action research portion of the project. Just like taking a look at a few of the demographics, in Nashua, we know it's a diverse community. We have students that are coming from all walks of life. They have different backgrounds. Every student comes from a home that's different from the next. And just taking a look at the race and ethnicity in Nashua is pretty crazy. You see that there's a large group that are white, non-Hispanic. You see that the next highest is Hispanic, and then so forth. A lot of these students don't come from homes that the first language is English, which means that when they go home, if they have a writing assignment, they don't have the support at home, which is why it's important that we're putting the support in place in schools so that they can have that extra help. They can ask questions in school. They have additional support for their writing because they don't have it at home a lot of the times. And I think that's something that we don't really necessarily think about. We're asking ourselves, why can't they write? Why can't they write? A lot of it is what they have at home and the support that they have at home and the lack of support that they have here in schools. Again, we're all from Fairgrounds Middle School, so we're really passionate about getting the writing intervention program into middle school specifically. Here are just some percentages and some numbers to show you guys. We have 16.43% of our students on IEPs currently. We have 10.60% of our students at limited English proficiency. That percentage of students right now are in the ELL program. A very, very small percentage of that, I believe it's about 2%, are being monitored and are close to leaving the program. But for the majority of them, they're full force, they're getting the support of ELL. But that entails obviously so much more than just the writing piece. So having an additional intervention program would be helpful. 504 plans, we have 8.22%. And then the total, we have 35.25%. That is a huge number of students who need support. So I think that total right there, in our school alone, is speaking volumes. That is a huge amount of students that are getting support, but they're not getting specific writing support. They're getting support to just get through the day and to just understand what the question is asking. So they really need an extra step or an extra program to help guide them and help them increase their writing skills. Free reduced lunch. This data, again, a lot of the times these students have backgrounds that we just don't know about. We can look at these numbers and say, wow, almost 45% of students that go to Fairgrounds are receiving free or reduced lunch. That doesn't tell us what they go home to. So when they come here, if they have the ability to voice their opinions and write, and they're inspired to write, that can save students. That can make them excited. That can make them want to take the next step of their education. But our lack of resources isn't always, right? It's not necessarily allowing us to get them to that next step. So just taking a look at the numbers, all we want you guys to really think about is that every student comes from a different background. Every student has the right to a good education, but we need to put the supports in place in order for them to do so. One prompt, we didn't actually grade this prompt, but I think it's really important. We asked the students, do you think writing is important? Why or why not? Obviously, you have those few that are like, nah, it's not important. We can just talk about things, right? First of all, it's kind of funny to hear, but it's really upsetting that they don't actually value the skill and they don't realize how far it can take them in life and how much they're going to be expected to know how to write well. But there's also a huge amount of students that do value the skill. And obviously, we want them to utilize their value and be able to become more educated students as time goes on. One of my students wrote, I do believe that writing is important. Writing is used in your daily life as an adult, and so learning how to write effectively at a young age is important. As an adult, writing is used as a way of advertising, persuading, and even just communication in general. Being a successful writer is important throughout our daily lives. The fact that we realize that as adults, writing is important, and our students realize that as adults, writing is going to be important, and we don't have the means to really help them with that, I think that this is enough for us to want to intervene and help them out. Maria's going to start to talk about kind of the long-term effects, just like the students know that it's coming up. They're going to need to know how to write. So Maria's going to talk about the long-term effects and some recommendations we have that we can hopefully implement this program for you.
All right. So some of the things that we have thought of was make class time for students to write a little and often, summarize an argument, explain a concept, apply a theory, start the assignment, keep a learning journal, write for half an hour every day at least. It's just literally getting them to write something on paper. The two solutions that we have to offer is create a reading and writing intervention program. Right now at Fairgrounds we do have a reading intervention program, but we would like this reading intervention program to also include writing as a major piece to it, or just create a whole new different writing intervention program. Creating a reading and intervention program. So this would be similar to the reading intervention program that we have now. It basically, the kids read books, they talk about it, and so on and so forth. But within this program, we would also like the kids to be explicitly taught how to write based off the books that they're reading. So for example, if they're reading a book and they want to write like a narrative about the book, the teacher would sit with them and say, okay, we're gonna take this book and we're gonna write a narrative about it, and this is how we're gonna do it. Since reading and writing often accompany each other, a program designed to combine both reading and writing into the curriculum would benefit the students, just because, like they have said before, a lot of the times the kids read and they don't know what they're actually reading. And a lot of the times we as teachers, I think we say, okay, you've read, now tell me what you, write on paper what you think you read. But then a lot of the kids are like, well, I didn't even understand what I read in the first place. So that's one of the problems. But then after, if they did understand what they read, they don't know how to apply the idea on paper. So this reading and writing intervention program would kind of facilitate that for them. And then create just the writing intervention program. It would be literally teaching them from the beginning. Basic skills, vocabulary, sentence and paragraph structure, how to write a sentence, how to start a paragraph with a good opening sentence. It is, I don't know if, I'm pretty sure you guys see the same. It is so almost discouraging for me to see how some of my students, if I ask a question, they don't even know how to restate the question and answer it, or how to even write an opening paragraph. And I have asked them, well, why is it so difficult for you? And they will tell you, like all kids tell the truth, I've never been taught how to do that, which is really like an eye-opening thing for me. So I think this writing intervention program would actually cater to those skills, just those specific skills that most of our kids need. Even if they're in the honors level, a lot of them are very, 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 very hard for them to even come up with a good sentence. So why do we need a reading intervention program? This is really for the future, for their future, how we've said, and how we've always said that it's going to help them. Students will be better prepared to be admitted and survive college. And students will be better prepared for the workforce after graduating high school or college. These are the two reasons why we would like something for them. Okay, prepare for college admissions. According to Gallagher, which is the author, she read about him, I read about him, and I really like him. He said that the choice between one student and another is razor thin, and often what separates the winners from the losers in the college application is the college application essay. I looked at a lot of the different websites, two different websites, and I actually went back to my old college to kind of ask, what are some of the requirements that you want in an essay? What makes a good essay? Period. and a lot of them first said error-free. They also said the essay needs voice and personality, so it has to be, the reader has to know that it's coming from the student and that it's actually like authentic. It flows, that there's good fluidity, and that it has a strong opening, something that I already mentioned is very difficult for our children to do. Not only that, in my old college as well, I was part of the admissions program, and a lot of the times when we would look at two candidates, they had pretty much everything the same, like the same GPA. They had the same extracurricular activities. They had like a lot of the same things. We literally looked at their essay, and that's how we decided who we took and who we didn't. That is how important these essays are. So if our students are are not prepared enough to be able to write well, at least basic skills, how are we going to even prepare them to get into college? Surviving college. So say they get admitted, okay? Only because they wrote a really good essay to get admitted does not necessarily mean that they're all done. I don't know about you, but when I first entered college, it was the biggest shock of my life because I never realized that I had to write 50-page papers. And I didn't really feel prepared for that when I graduated. So colleges have expressed the inability of freshmen to be proficient writers. According to a study conducted in 2003 by the National Commissions on Writing in American Schools and Colleges, this is like a program that was created by the government and the College Board. They said that 17% of freshmen require remedial writing classes. That means that a lot of the freshmen that they get don't have the skills that they should have by the time they get to college. So therefore, it is costing colleges across America about $1 billion just to be able to get these students to be able to at least acquire some sort of proficiency, not even to get them to the level that they need to be, but to at least help them get somewhere in that level or close to it, because they are saying that they can't write. And I really like this quote. In an increasingly demanding world of literacy and importance of our students, to leave our schools as effective writers has magnified. The ability to write well, once a luxury, has become a necessity. Today, writing is fundamental for success. So, writing in the workforce. So they graduate college and that good stuff. In a survey of 318 employers published in 2013 by the Association of American Colleges and Universities, 80% of these employers said that colleges should focus more on writing and oral communication. Colleges already had their students be in these remedial writing courses, and they got them to the best that they could, right? Colleges are then saying, we got these kids that lacked a lot of these basic writing skills even before they came to us. So they're even saying, yes, we could be the problem, but then the problem stems from way below, from when these kids are so young. That's why it is important to integrate these writing intervention courses so that this isn't happening and we don't have, once the kids enter the workforce, they're not, pretty much companies are spending like $3 billion a year to retrain the kids because they think that they still don't have enough training on writing. And a lot of these companies have said it's better for us to invest this amount of money than to lose money. Basically, that's what they're saying. We have to retrain these kids because they're graduating college, they're not coming up with the writing skills that we need. And the reason why we need them to write is because in today's technological age, everything is basically communicated through email. So if you cannot write a clear email, you are literally costing these companies money. And let's talk about the kids who don't go to college. All right, there are a lot of them who actually prefer to go, they go into a trade, and that's okay. And but they all also have said that they do require at least the basic writing skills just to be able to communicate. You know, there are a lot of people who need to write at least short memos or something, and if they are not able to do this, then they will not be able to be, they will not succeed in their life. A lot of companies actually take their writing skills into consideration when it comes to even promoting a lot of our students. And many employers today actually have started to ask for a lot of resume and cover letters, even in the trades job, you know, in trade jobs. So like if you cannot come up with a good enough cover letter or at least an error-free resume, are our students straight out of high school really prepared? And I think that for us is like something that's very eye-opening. And finally, for me, I agree with him as well. I want my students to be aware that writing can be either a ticket into work or a ticket out of work, whether it's right after high school or to get into college and then after college. And that's basically it for us.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Gary?
So, I think we do have, just in the regular ed classes, some the skills to improve writing for the kids that are kind of at the 2 or greater. But when I look at those kids that you're ranking at the 1s, those are the kids that we absolutely have to target for our writing intervention program because their skills are so basic that they need help like immediately. And I think one of the biggest problems with grading writing as a regular ed teacher is the correcting piece. You know, we have 100 students on our caseloads typically, and that takes a lot of time. And if those kids are going to improve, you need to do it frequently. And having a writing interventionist with maybe some sort of automatic paper grader they're free. You can do that and maybe save some of these kids at the middle school level or wherever because they just got so far behind for a number of reasons. So I think this is absolutely necessary. So this is awesome.
Thank you.
Can I just jump in for a second? Because I forgot to mention this about the graphs. Another thing that really surprised me about the graphs was that you think that you would see the 8th grade moving towards the 3 and 4, but regardless of what grade level, they're all still in that middle area or below. So you would think you would see some 8th grade really more towards the 3 and 4, and obviously there's gray areas among the 3 grade levels, or you would see like substantial increase.
Yeah, those are the ones that need help. Like.
And I agree with you, Gary, but I also feel that we need all of our core content area teachers to look at student work from a content standpoint and their ability to write standpoint. I am hopeful that we can also set some standards for the district. Paula?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I'm wondering, as I look at that data, what are the effects of just the straightforward leveling? What effects does leveling have on that data? Because again, at the elementary level, what magically happens between 5th and 6th grade where all of a sudden we have to level kids?
Yeah.
When in the elementary it's heterogeneously grouped. And, you know, the whole idea of what are we who's doing the modeling, when we have an audience, who's our audience, who's critiquing, you know, can that impact any of that data?
I'm sure that it does. That would be another teacher, leader, action, research question because that's a huge area whether we should level or not. And
Maybe at the elementary move to leveling too, if maybe 5th grade might help.
It was
They
just
get
interesting
Yeah.
if somebody
Kids
could,
get lost in 4th, 5th grade.
Yeah.
If somebody would take on just a pilot, one pilot class or grade, to see what would happen across the board if there was no
Oh,
leveling.
I'd go the other way. Oh, that's interesting.
I
That's
had-
interesting. I have the opposite view of that. Yeah.
we do have some good news from the writing standpoint. I understand that last year in the elementary schools there was a pilot, a Columbia Writing Program pilot, that there has been some fabulous data gathered from. I just heard about this week and I didn't get a chance to contact the people. But I am hoping to go to a training so that I can at least know what our kids will be coming from with. Yes?
I'm thinking of, like reading, for example, and how kids become better readers simply by reading more, having more opportunity to read. And one of your slides earlier on talked about how little opportunity kids have to actually write.
Yes.
Those intentional, moments where nothing that's even rated. It's like, give kids, 3 minutes to write whatever it is. And I think about just instructional changes that could happen in every classroom that might somehow work toward the common lifting of writing. And as Gary mentioned, you've got your kids clearly that, but I think we'll even identify more clearly the kids that need the intervention.
I agree. That slide was in one of Kelly Gallagher's books, and it was very surprising to me. I think I pointed out the statistic on the bottom that only 9% of middle school assignments require more than one paragraph of writing. And the graph broke it down even more about completion or multiple choice questions. And really, we are not, as a nation, requiring our students to write enough. You're right. We read every day. In my science class, I know my students write every day, but they certainly aren't doing the extended length writing every day that they really need to improve.
It's a time thing. It took me.
It is a time
It
thing.
took me 20 hours last week, 2 weeks ago, to grade 100 papers
Right.
that I received, and that's a long time after school to devote, and that's simply why you only see the 9%. And there are ways to fix that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I went to a fabulous workshop last week, a science workshop on standards, the next gen standards, and one of the things we discussed there was time. It was time to correct papers, time to do everything, and how that greatly impacts our job and students' job, because it's all a matter of balance, right? So.
And Gary, he is a veteran teacher. I am a second-year social studies teacher. It took him 20 hours to correct essays. It has taken me up to 40 or 50 hours to do it. So it is a lot about time.
It is. I use the district writing rubric that we put up to correct most of my writing assignments. And because I'm also a language arts teacher, and I'm also on the language arts steering committee for the district, and I go to professional development days where we sit and correct cornerstone writing prompts, I'm probably a little quicker than you guys are at doing that because I know exactly what I'm looking for, but it still takes a lot of time. Diane?
I was in your class, Sue. Can I talk about the little writing prompt that you had the picture with
Oh,
the
sure.
plates on the...
Of course.
See, that's the kind of writing I'm thinking about. You showed this beautiful picture, an interesting, somebody's door with plates all around it, and I believe the prompt for the kids was to simply, what do you notice? Write what you see. And I wrote too, and I think you let it go for like 5 minutes.
So I do stream of conscious writing with my students starting in the beginning of the year to build sustained writing with them, and I teach them how to write stream of conscious, which is no grammar, no organization whatsoever. Your pencil or your pen is to the paper, and the goal is to write until my buzzer on my phone rings. And I start with 2 minutes, and we build up. And my students are currently at 11 minutes. So it took all year to get everybody at 11 minutes. And there are, thanks to Pinterest, all of these fabulous pictures out there that are so in-depth and interesting. And I put a picture up, and it's their starter. It's the way I center them and kind of calm them down and prepare them to do whatever science we're doing that day. And they write. And then they get to share, a couple of kids share. In the beginning of the year, more than a couple of kids share because they're all so excited about it. But it really dramatically has increased their ability to write and minimized the complaints, honestly, about, oh, we have to write again.
And do you always grade those, Sue, or do you just let them write?
Oh, no.
See, that's the point.
I don't grade them.
Right.
It's, if they don't do it, they have a separate section in their science binder for it. If they don't do it, I will conference with them. But really, this is about them learning to to find that inner curiosity and imagination that all students need to be successful, particularly in science class, because it's all about curiosity, right? And they have to be able to express that. That's part of being a student. You can look at a picture and see how beautiful it is or interesting, but can you tell somebody else? You know? So I got that idea from somebody else, another science teacher actually, and it's,
Not making better writers.
it is. It's a regular part of our day. Are there any other questions?
Well, we're gonna actually, it's
All
a
right.
tremendous topic, but we're gonna have to.
That's good.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.